Can Oregon have a better roster in 2025? I think that's pretty tough to do. Now, that doesn't mean that it's impossible per se, but we can't know, obviously, until the season plays out and you get to have a whole assessment. Because right now, Oregon's 2025 roster is number one, hypothetical, and number two, on paper. Now, it sounds like I said the same thing twice. What the roster is going to look like is hypothetical because we don't really know until you see spring football, really play out, and frankly, fall camp as well. But then even if you're right about what it looks like on paper, that's all it is. It's the roster on paper. So, like going into last year, I thought, hey, this is the best defensive line Oregon's had since 2014. It was. I think it was even better than that particular unit. So Dylan sent in this question, and I don't know that I agree with him. I'd love to be wrong, but he says, I'm sorry, but one more mailbag. He'd send in some other questions. And by the way, never apologize for sending in mailbag questions. This is my favorite part of the show. I can think of plenty of stuff to talk about. I'd way rather hear from you guys. So drop your thoughts in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter or become a Locked On Ducks insider. Is there any position next year that won't be better than this previous year? I think the only spot is tackle, and the only maybe is QB. More is up in the air as he has a much higher ceiling but lower floor. Other places where we lose a lot of guys are replaced by better guys such as safety and or development of sophomore guys behind them such as D-line and linebacker. Well, I have a hard time getting behind the idea that Oregon's defensive line is going to be better in 2025 than it was in 2024. That doesn't mean you can't have a similar level of production and it be really good. But you're losing. We have not heard yet on Jamari Caldwell, who I would love to have come back to the Ducks, but that's still being sorted out. If Caldwell comes back, that'd be a significant piece. I think Oregon has enough depth if he isn't there, because Amari Washington, I am bullish on Amari Washington. That guy is so good. But like in the long run of his career, I think he could be even better than Caldwell, and Caldwell was a stud for Oregon's D-line this year. But let's say Jamari Caldwell can't come back. If you lose him and Derrick Harmon, who's going to be a first-round pick, and Jordan Birch, I know Oregon has recruited this position group really, really well. I know they have some key returners like Mateo Uyunglele, and you've got Bear Alexander coming in from USC. It is darn near impossible, even for the best programs in the country that recruit at the highest level, bring in the best portal classes, whatever. It's darn near impossible to say you're going to look at that group and lose that much talent and be better next year. That is a really dicey proposition. So that's one group off the top of my head that I would love to see maintain the production they had this year. I don't know that they can. Doesn't mean they won't be good. Doesn't mean they won't be an above average unit that is productive. But when they face an offensive line like the one against Washington that just isn't capable, is next year's unit able to put up 10 sacks? They might be able to put up 7 against a group like that. I don't know about 10. I don't care which conference opponent you're going up against. 10 sacks is an insane number. That is an insane number. And it wasn't just one or two guys. It was everyone. Harmon had one. Birch had a couple. Mateo had one or two. Like, everybody was getting in on the action there. Everybody gets a piece. Like Lloyd McClendon chewing out the umpires against the Yankees. And I think it was 2013, 14, sitting in that sort of time. Any Mariners fans out there will understand that reference. But it was an iconic call from Dave Sims. That's why it popped in my head. Everybody gets a piece. So that's one group that immediately I say it's hard to just replicate that production. Then I go to the offensive line and say, again, this should be a good unit for Oregon. I don't know that you can expect Isaiah World and Alex Harkey, the two offensive tackle transfers, to just come in and be as good as Conerly and Cornelius were this year. Conerly might have just played his way over the last month of the season in particular into being a first-round pick. And Cornelius, I haven't done a deep dive on his draft grade. I don't think he's going past the 3rd or 4th round. Can those guys do that? Maybe. But remember, Conerly and Cornelius were Oregon's bookend tackles in 2023 as well. They blocked for Bo Nix, and then they blocked for Dillon Gabriel. And that continuity up front, having a second year, like that helps those guys up front a great deal. It helps anybody in the position to be in the same place for a second season. Now, those are two groups that I look at and say, boy, you're losing a lot of talent. And even though I like the guys that are coming, I don't know that you can expect. Think about it like this. 2023, Oregon has Jackson Powers Johnson. Wins the Remington Award. Guy is starting for the Raiders, who are a disastrous organization, but he's really good. At least from what I have seen. Poncho this year at center was good. But can you say that he was as good as JPJ? Of course not. Doesn't mean he didn't have a good season. He did. But the center position in 2023 to 2024, there was a drop-off. Because that guy that he's replacing is just that good, and they don't come around very often. And it's hard to have a guy as talented as that with that much experience just waiting in the wings at a variety of positions. So those are two groups that I look at and say, I hope they can be as good, but they're probably going to be 80 and 90% of what they were a season ago. And this is just to your question of, are there any that won't be better? Like, those are two where I don't think you can be better, and I think you're hoping to be as good. Then I go to the wide receiver spot, where you lose Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden. Like, that's just a lot. That's a lot of production. Now, plenty of talent in that room. Bring in Malik Benson. Maybe that's a Trayshawn Holden type, where he's playing a lot of Z receiver and is a big body guy on the outside. You bring back Evan Stewart. That's huge. You bring in DeCorian Moore. Can DeCorian, as a true freshman, be as good as Tez Johnson was in his fourth or fifth year of college football last year? It's asking a lot. I see how you could get there. But that's another position group where when you lose two guys, I was always bullish on Trayshawn Holden. He was really good. And we all love and know how good Tez was for the last cut. Did you know he's Bo Nix's brother, by the way? I struggle to see how you're elevating at that spot. And then you go to the quarterback, which I think you hit the nail on the head. Dante Moore has a higher ceiling than Dillon Gabriel. He's bigger and has a bigger arm. But his floor is absolutely lower. Gabriel had an incredibly high floor. That's one of the reasons that Oregon brought him in, is you know what he's going to be, and he was exactly what I expected, and he was great. Doesn't mean he was great in every single moment, and I know Oregon's season didn't end the way it wanted to, and the offense really struggled, but on the whole, Dillon Gabriel is exactly what we expected, or at least what I expected, and what Oregon was looking for. But Dante Moore, there are a lot bigger peaks and valleys where you've got room to grow there. So those are just a couple of the position groups. Now, there are other ones on the flip side where I'd say maybe Trey McNutt is just a bona fide stud. Thieneman goes back to being his 2023 self at Purdue, and you do have better safeties than what Oregon had in 2024. And I thought their safety play was better than 23, but still, as we saw in the Rose Bowl, was not good enough. Was not where Oregon needs it to be. And I look at the corners and say, well, Nico Reed had an awesome season. He was phenomenal. He was also behind Jaleel Florence on the depth chart in 2023 when Florence was healthy. So Florence is coming back, and if he's fully healthy, well, yeah, then you could have a better player than Nico Reed on the outside. Do you have someone that's better than Jabbar Muhammad? I don't know. There are questions there. But overall, Dylan, I think you came at this question with, man, it seems like we're going to get better at all these spots. I think Oregon is going to face an uphill battle and will have to do a lot of high-end coaching and development to even have a roster that performs at its highest level the way that this one did. Now, as we saw throughout the year, whether it's the Rose Bowl, the Idaho, the Boise State game, Wisconsin, wherever, there are peaks and valleys, so there might be days where Oregon looks better next season. But right now, do I expect that? I picked Oregon to go 12-0. and I picked them to win the Big Ten championship game against Penn State. Right now, I would not pick Oregon to go 12-0. Their schedule is pretty favorable, so I still think they're a double-digit win team. I don't know about 12-0, at least right now. Maybe you guys will talk me into that as time goes on, but they're losing a lot. So I didn't even hit every position group there. Those are just the ones that stand out the most to me. Defensive line, offensive line, quarterback, you're facing an uphill battle to just be at the level where you were a season ago, let alone surpass it. And those are three pretty important position groups.